Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning into the Zook. My name is Suikenik, and tonight we got a real show for y'all. To start off the night, I would like to happily introduce our first guest, Mr. Samuel Clemens. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Twain.
It's a pleasure to be here, Luke. You can call me Mark.
Okay, Mark. Let's give a warm welcome to our next guest, little Huckleberry Finn.
Howdy there, Zook. Pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
Thanks, glad to have you, Huckleberry. Our final guest tonight is the principal of Dayton High, who replaced the original version of the novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, with a version that replaced the N-word with slave.
Morning, Zook. See you, Mark.
See you, Mr. Belding.
Happy to be here tonight. And yes, it is true that I did decide to change the N-word in the book.
Okay. Once again, welcome all. I would like to start off tonight with a question directed towards everyone, so speak freely. What was your overall opinion of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn?
Well, I personally think that it portrayed my life very well and showed how I overcame my struggles and turned out to be a lot more smart than people thought I was. Mark did a great job writing the novel, and I'm happy to see all the love that it's received.
Well, Zook, in my opinion, after I wrote The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, I solidified myself as a prominent American writer. This book is one of my great creations, and I'm very proud of it. Although my book is highly controversial, I just want to let the people of America know that The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was not intended to be racist towards African Americans, but just to portray the light and how people speak back then.
Although I respect your opinion, personally, I thought this book was very inappropriate. You used a lot of language that is not reasonable for high school students, or any student in general. The satire used in the story portrays a negative light on many things within society that is detrimental to a student and society in general. Moreover, the use of the N-word is overused throughout the book. This word is completely useless in the context of the story, and for those who argue it is necessary to a certain extent. Thank you.
Well, I, for one, like the novel very much. However, moving on now, I have a question directed towards you, Mark, which might spark a little debate. Why did you decide to use the word nigger so many times in your book? I mean, a total of 219 times. It's a lot.
I can definitely see why people thought my word choice was controversial or excessive, but in my mind, my main intention was just to make a genuine book that captured how people talked back then. During this time, people just referred to those slaves as the N-word just to use them as property, and this is how people refer to them. I was not trying to do this in a racist way, but just how people talked.
Yes, I see your point. What do you think about that, Principal Belding?
Actually, I could not disagree more. I'm insulted that a man of a civilized race uses words to another human being. In no way should this word ever be used. This is demeaning to black people in society, and my students should not have to read it. As long as I am principal in my school, this book will not be allowed in my classroom.
Well, to have my name on an alternate version of my book makes me sick to my stomach. I wrote this for a reason, and by taking away the N-word, it doesn't accurately portray the time period.
I understand your thinking, but why was the word used so many times? You could have gotten the idea across to the reader by using it significantly less.
I used it so many times because that's how people talked back then, and without the word, I would not have gotten my idea across.
Okay, let me stop
This
you
is
there.
ridiculous.
Hey, okay. Let me stop you there before things get too heated. Moving on now. I believe Mr. Belding has to leave us for the night because he has a plane to catch back to Florida. So, Mr. Belding,
I am not done here. Just let you know.
thank you very much
This
again
is absurd!
for being with us here tonight, and have a safe trip back.
You know what? Thank you, Luke. I appreciate the respect. Mark, we're not friends. Huck, nice seeing you again, buddy.
See you, Mr. Belding.
Nevertheless, now joining us is the runaway slave, Jim.
Hey Zook, thanks for bringing me in. Huck, is that my man?
Hey, man.
Mr. Twain.
Nice to meet you,
sir.
Good to have you, Jim. So, Jim, tell me about the adventure you had with Huck.
Alright, it's kind of a long story, but it all started on Miss Watson's farm. Huck and his good friend Tom were the troublemakers around town. And I didn't really know Huck too much, but I understood that he and his dad had an abusive relationship. When Huck's dad came into town and took Huck to his house in the woods, I wasn't sure if I would ever see him again. However, I realized I had to escape the farm in order to become a free man. so I escaped and ran away to Jackson's Island. Coincidentally, Huck and I were reunited and escaped our previously oppressive lives by sailing down the Mississippi together, sharing many laughs. I had never had a good friend. I never had a friend as good as Huck, and he will forever remain my best friend, who I hold close to my heart.
Jim, I think that story touched all our hearts and almost brought a tear to my eye. Huck, do you want to say something?
I really feel for my pal Jim and all that he's had to deal with as a slave. I certainly knew it wasn't right. But that was the reality back then, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I am thankful to have Jim support me through my struggles, and that we both made it out okay. I truly love him and look at him as a father figure.
Were you scared of the judgment you might receive if people knew he was your best friend?
Yes, I was constantly worrying about people finding out that we were friends. At first, I was very against him being a runaway slave, but as I traveled with him, I realized he needed to escape and that slavery was wrong. In the end, I knew I made the right decision by ripping the letter to Miss Watson.
I see. You felt that it didn't matter what people thought of it. You only judged him based on all the nice things he did and how he was always there for you.
Pretty much, sir.
Well, that was mighty mature of you, Huckleberry. Mark, how did you intend to build a relationship between Jim and Huck?
Well, I wanted to show the hardships of a white child raised to believe slavery was right and a worthless slave's relationship. During this time, nobody was friends or even acquaintances with another race. And throughout the novel, Huck has to make difficult decisions on whether or not to be like the rest of society or to help out his black friend, Jim.
Fascinating, Mark. You're truly a brilliant author. I think we have time for one more question tonight, so if you could change one thing in the novel, what would it be? This is directed toward everyone, so speak freely.
Personally, I think Mark Twain did a great job writing the book about my life and how me and Jim, went through all that we went through, so I wouldn't change anything.
Agreed. I really do agree. And it's just so funny because all the good times you had.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Mark because you wrote a great book. But if there was one thing I could change, it would be that the seriousness of slavery and the effects on us.
Although nobody is perfect and nothing is perfect, this novel was truly what I intended it to be. Through the use of satire, I intended to poke fun at common things throughout society. I also wanted to bring light into the difficulties of the relationship between mixed races. And I think through the use of dialect and my words, I truly captured what I wanted to.
Personally, the dialect was a little too difficult to understand at some points, but the book overall was fantastic, Mark, don't get me wrong. However, that's all we have time for tonight, folks. So, thank you, Mark, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Huck, for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's give a special thanks to Mr. Belding, who had to unfortunately leave us early. But yeah.
Have a nice night, guys. Thank you.